Okay, welcome everybody. It's really lovely to see you. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Just a quick introduction. My name is Sammy, or Samantha is my full name, and I basically have a business called Samantha Joy Wellness, which I've just changed from natural nutrition. So those of you who know me will have known me for a while, will have identified me as natural nutrition, but I've changed recently. And the reason for that mainly is because as a nutritionist, I obviously do have a lot of clients that I see that I work with nutrition, but I also offer like a holistic approach to health. So I believe that, of course, food and diet are really important, but there's also the other elements of health as well. So I'm also a Reiki master, so I work with energy. I do sound healing. I'm a yoga teacher. And I also teach meditation, and I do a chinate sang, which is an abdominal massage as well. So I wanted to kind of rename my business to encapsulate all of those things, really. So hence the name change. So we're here tonight to talk about the restrict binge cycle. And we're talking about restriction in particular because this is something which actually has the opposite effect to what we want it to have. And so what I've done is developed a process that helps people to not restrict to begin with, so that they can actually enjoy the food that they're eating, but still to lose weight and to heal metabolic diseases like diabetes and obesity, fatty liver disease, like metabolic syndrome, basically, but also be able to keep that weight off and to stay healthy for life. So the restrict binge cycle, or the restricting kind of mindset, is very much a short-term quick fix mindset. And so that is not something that is going to give you long-term health. So that's why we're here tonight. So before we start, I just always like to do a short kind of meditation just to bring everybody into their bodies, to ground into the space that we're in. So I'm just going to invite you to close your eyes for a moment. Sit nice and comfortably wherever you are. If you can, have your feet flat on the floor as well, because that just helps to connect you with the floor, with the ground. And sit up nice and tall. You can lift and roll your shoulders up and back, and then gently close the eyes whenever you're ready. And we'll just take a moment, first of all, to bring our awareness to the bases of our feet. So feeling into the base of the feet, connecting those with the earth, with the floor beneath you. And I want you to see, sense, or feel roots growing out of the base of your feet. And so these roots are growing downwards, down through the floor, through the concrete beneath you, and into the soil, and down past all the rocks and the insects. Maybe there's some other tree roots there that you can see. And just envisage now your roots growing down, down, down. And they're growing down into the earth, anchoring you, bringing you this really sort of safe and grounded feeling in your body. And these roots aren't just growing downwards, they're also growing outwards as well. So they're anchoring you really firmly to where you are. And then as you start to inhale, you can imagine or sense or feel the earth energy moving up through the roots. That earth energy is coming upwards into your body, into the bases of your feet. And it's coming up your legs, through the knees, the thighs, and coming all the way to the base of your body, your root chakra, your Muladhara chakra. And this is basically the base of your energetic body. This is where you connect to Mother Earth. And this chakra is really important for grounding and feeling safe and secure. So this color, the color of the chakra, is red. So if you can envisage the color red as you focus on the base of the spine, perineum, that sort of central part of your body. And then gradually we're going to move our awareness up into the sacrum, So this is basically the pelvis, the front of the pelvis. And this is our emotional center. So we're just connecting here with that part of our bodies now. And this is represented by the color orange. And then moving upwards again into the solar plexus, so the space just beneath the rib cage. And this is our willpower, our drive, proactivity. Just connecting with the color yellow here. And then we're moving up into the heart space. This is the place of unconditional love, compassion, self-care. And connecting with the green color of the heart space. The higher heart, which is like a light pink color. Moving our awareness further up through the body to the throat. Connecting with our authentic voice, our authentic expression. And feeling into the color blue. Moving our awareness up again to the third eye, which is the space between the eyebrows. This is our intuition, our inner voice. Listening to what it's saying to us. And this is connecting here with the color purple. And then moving up out of the top of the head to the crown chakra, which is the space just above the head. And this is the white color, the purity of divine wisdom and guidance from the cosmos, from the universe, from God, whatever word you want to use to express that. Our connection to spirit. And then from this place, we're just going to bring our awareness back down to the heart space. Just connecting with any intention that we have for the webinar this evening. Anything that you would like to get out of this session. And just sit with that intention for a moment. And then when you're ready, we're going to come out of the meditation. So hopefully you're feeling grounded in your body now. Just take a moment to wiggle your fingers and your toes. And then when you're ready, you can look up. Okay, lovely guys. Thank you so much for doing that with me. It's really an important part of this process because I feel like, we've had such busy days. Our energy can be very scattered. So by just coming back into our bodies and grounding ourselves, it can really help us to focus. And that's a meditation that you can do at any time of day. You can do that in the middle of work if you're feeling a bit stressed or overthinking. It can really bring you out of that anxiety mind and back into the body. So like I said at the beginning, we're going to be talking about restriction, about dieting, about the strict binge cycle. And the first sort of part of this really is just to educate you a little bit about the science behind why restriction does not work long term. And when I say restriction, what I mean really is reducing the amount of food that you're taking in kind of an extreme way in order to lose weight. And that can be a number of different methods. So it could be from dieting, which is something that has been very prevalent ever since I was born. I can remember, dieting was a thing in the 80s and 90s, and it still continues to be now. So dieting is a system of cutting out something. Usually it's something like a nutrient, like carbohydrates, for example, or foods that contain carbohydrates. It could be increasing protein intake. It could be cutting calories. It could be, the slim fast plan, that kind of stuff. All of these methods are in some way restrictive. They're in some way reducing what you're taking in order to make your body lose weight. It could also be the weight loss injection, because the weight loss injection causes restriction. It causes it through a different method, but it still causes restriction. It removes your hunger. It stops you from wanting to eat food, and that therefore restricts the amount of food that you're taking in. So when I talk about restriction tonight, I'm going to be I mean all of those things, all of those ways to minimize food intake. And yes, it works in a short-term way. So if you start eating less, you will lose weight, but over time your body will adapt to the reduced amount of food that you're eating. And so what then happens is that your metabolic rate slows down. So that's the rate at which you're burning that food up for energy. And also certain processes in the body will be turned down. And what happens then is eventually you just get to a point where you are really hungry and you can't stick with the restriction anymore. And that causes the opposite of restriction, which is the overeating or the binging that happens. And often we get stuck in that cycle. And that's what I'm going to be explaining to you in a moment. So first of all, like, do you feel stuck? Like, I felt stuck for a very long time in my life. If you felt stuck, put your hand up, because I think it's really something that we all go through at some point, mainly because there's so much information out there. It's so overwhelming, and you end up in what I find is like decision paralysis. You're like, there's so many options, I just don't know which way to go. So one of the things that I'm trying to do here is to simplify everything for you and help you to find the right route for you. So you might feel stuck, but you want to be healthy. You want to feel good in your body. You want to look healthy. You know, this isn't about like being skinny or fitting into a size 10. This is about how you feel in your body. And you can't ever achieve that feeling of looking healthy and feeling good in your body if you feel bad about your body now. You're not able to get yourself out of that. You don't like what you see in the mirror. You're looking at yourself and you're telling yourself that you look ugly, like you look fat, that you look disgusting, that parts of your body are disgusting. And, you know, you have periods of being like good, and then it all goes out of the window. And those are just a few of the things that I used to think about myself when I looked in the mirror. And that was me for actually about 20 years of my life. When I was really young, I was told that I was fat by a swimming coach when I was 8 years old. And it really made me have this very negative view of my body. And I would constantly tell it, particularly this part of my body here, the front, you know, the abdomen, that it was disgusting, you know, and I'd hate it. I would put all this negative energy towards myself. And all it did was make me feel even worse about myself. And this is a really, really difficult place to live in. And, you know, I lived in cycles of that for like I said, about 20 years. So I have been there. I understand how it feels. And this is one of the reasons why I'm trying to help other people to get out of that. So this idea of restriction, it's a very outdated paradigm. It's something that has been around for quite a long time now. And even though there is so much research out there talking about that restriction does not lead to weight loss in the long term, it's still the model that most people use. And it's still being promoted as a way to do it by the diet industry, which is, and by the way, a multi-billion-dollar industry. Like they're not there to help you with your health, they're there to make money. And that's quite a cynical view, but unfortunately it is actually true. And I think once we can try and get out of that mindset of restriction, it can really help us to make steps forward. So this is the cycle that I was stuck in, that most of my clients have been stuck in, that a lot of my friends have been stuck in as well. And it was almost like a normal behavior when I was growing up. Like, you know, I was at school in the 90s and like everybody was kind of doing this. Everybody was like restricting and not eating. And it was like eating's cheating. All these kind of things were out there. And the problem with this is that you end up getting stuck in the cycle. And it actually does not give you the result you want, which is weight loss. It actually makes you more obsessed about food than you were before. It disconnects you from your body and from the signals that your body's giving you about hunger and fullness. And it also causes metabolic and hormonal imbalances, which then create like more frustration because you're gaining weight and you don't know why, because you're eating less. It gives you things like brain fog and memory loss. And it can lead to all sorts of hormonal problems. Like I lost my periods out of having this kind of behavior for a long time. And yeah, I felt horrendous. So it is, you know, I'm going to talk about the long-term health implications in a minute, but if you look at the cycle, the four sort of parts of this cycle, the first thing is, I'm going to go on a diet because I want to lose some weight. That's usually the first thing people think. So you restrict food, you cut out carbs, let's say, carbohydrates, including fiber. Fiber is one of the most filling foods you can eat. So you start getting more hungry. You can stick with it for maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, maybe a month. Actually, some people, can do that. But eventually something will happen and you will start getting hungry and hungry and hungrier. And, you might get stressed at work. You might have an argument with your partner. You might, have some emotional upset at home or something. And you go, oh God, I don't care anymore. And you literally you give in to that hunger. And then the cravings start and you're like, you start dreaming about donuts and cheesecake. And, that is not your fault. That's your brain saying, give me energy now because I need it. And eventually you give into it because it's you against biology, basically. And you are never going to win a long term. So then you go into a binge, and it's uncontrollable. You're not able to kind of stop yourself and you don't know why. You're like watching yourself eating this food and you're like, why am I eating this food even though I know I shouldn't be or whatever? But it happens because it's an automatic biological drive, and it's one of the most strongest drives that there is to feed yourself. So it's very difficult to overcome. And if you think about the amazing availability of food we have now as well, and the type of food that is available easily to us, it's all high calorie, it's all ultra processed, it's all full of sugar and fat and salt, and it perpetuates that cycle. Eventually you feel horrendous guilt about what's happened. And you're like, oh my God, I'm such a bad person. What is wrong with me? I used to say that to myself all the time. What is wrong with me? And I would feel like it was my fault. Like I'd done something wrong. Like I didn't have the willpower. I didn't have the dedication or the understanding of why I was doing this. And so what happens is you go, right, I'm going to go on another diet. So you start again on Monday morning, right? From Monday onwards, I'm going to, whatever it is. So you end up getting stuck. And actually over time, the implications of doing that are quite serious for your health. It was really kind of a shock to me to learn that those people that diet chronically, so yo-yo dieters, over time, actually end up heavier than they were at the beginning because of the metabolic changes that happen. And this little diagram kind of just really nicely shows what happens. So we all have this thing in our body that is called our set state or set point weight. And it's basically a weight that our body will stick at. It's like a plateau, if you like. So you might be plateauing at a weight, particularly now, and you think, right, I want to lose some weight. So you restrict and your weight goes down. So it goes down here. And then you get to this point where you're like, I'm so hungry. I'm really stressed. You have a night out with your friends and you eat a pizza and you go, oh, ruined it all now anyway. And then you start overeating again and you start gaining the weight. But what happens after a diet is that your body actually, because of the metabolic changes that have happened, you start actually gaining more weight. So one of the things I learned was that the body puts down new fat tissue when you're in this period of restriction. So it goes, oh, we're not getting enough energy. When we do get energy, we're going to store it to keep it just in case we go through another starvation. So actually the body synthesizes new tissue, new cells, fat cells, to put that extra energy in. So as soon as you go into the binge, you start gaining the weight back, and then you actually have the capacity to gain more weight because you have more fat tissue to fill up. And those fat cells gradually get fuller, and they then release hormones, which also drive you to eat more food as well. So it's all of your biology is almost like working against you. But it's actually there as a protective mechanism. You know, when we were living as hunter-gatherers, it was a really helpful mechanism because we had periods of feast and famine. Now we're just feasting constantly. We don't have the famine anymore. So this biological process that has developed is actually sabotaging us, really. So this is a lady that I worked with, Robin. She had basically been stuck in this mentality all her life. And, you know, I talked to her very much about this idea of a mental prison. And I think this is really interesting because when you're in this kind of cycle of dieting and weight loss and binging, you are like obsessed with food. You can't stop thinking about it, whether it's foods that you're not going to be eating, whether it's not foods that you shouldn't be eating, whether it's things that you do eat and don't eat. And it's just, it becomes so overwhelming. It really consumes your life, actually. And it wasn't until I kind of stepped away from that I realized how much energy it was taking up. You know, I was using all this energy, like mental capacity and mental space, thinking about it. And, you know, she sort of did my intuitive food freedom program and eventually was able to kind of free herself from that. And it really is so liberating. So what are the physical and mental implications of weight cycling or yo-yo dieting? Well, apart from gaining more weight and generally being heavier than you were to begin with, it actually is really bad for your cardiovascular system. So that means your heart and your blood vessels, your arteries, your veins, capillaries, because you're constantly in this state of feeding and famine, up and down, increase, decrease. And your body actually responds to that in quite a confused way. So it can give you high blood pressure, and it can also increase your chances of heart disease. When you go into a period of restriction, you actually use muscle for fuel, because if you're not feeding yourself enough food, your body will find that fuel elsewhere. So this is one of the big impacts of taking the GLP-1 injection that people are now discovering. I mean, we've known about it for about 6 months now, that it's actually a really serious side effect of that restriction, because your body is going, God, I'm having like virtually no food. Quickly use up the muscle because it's available, it's there, all the fat's gone, and the muscle is the last thing that's left. And when you then refeed yourself, your body doesn't just suddenly make the muscle again. What does it do? It makes new fat tissue. So that ends up being filled up, and then that's why people gain weight. It creates havoc with your hormones. So when you put your body into a restriction, you're actually stressing it. You're making it into a stress state. And this can be like a long-term stress state as well. So cortisol elevates, which is the stress hormone. And then that tells your body to store more fat. So apart from the restriction and the metabolic changes with that, it's actually the cortisol is also telling your body to store more fat. And it's usually around the middle of the body as well. And this can kind of also be a sign of something called visceral fat, which is fat around the organs. And then also this cortisol elevation makes you obsess about food, because cortisol is there to help you in like fight or flight response. So in order to run away, you need food, you need energy. So it actually helps you to do that. But in this case, it has the opposite effect. And then it slows down your metabolism as well. So your body will adjust to how much fuel you put into it. If you suddenly stop putting fuel in, everything will turn down. You know, it'll stop burning that fuel as quickly. And so your metabolic rate slows down, and that's to conserve energy. And then it's harder to lose weight every single time that happens, because the body is really like sort of turning down all its processes. And it doesn't just speed up when you start eating either. You know, it actually stays slow, and you know, you can change your metabolic rate, but it does require things like exercise and, you know, the types of foods that you're eating as well. So you can get yourself out of this, but it does obviously take a bit of work. Surprisingly enough, this actually increases inflammation as well. So inflammation is basically a normal response of the immune system. It happens if you cut your skin and it goes a bit red and it goes a bit warm. That's inflammation. Okay, so you can, on the outside of your body, you can see inflammation, and it's a short-term thing. It's like an acute response to injury, and then it goes away after the healing has happened. But we can also have internal inflammation that we can't see and we can't feel. And if we're in this state of inflammation for a long time, it can lead to certain types of conditions. For example, diabetes and insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes. And all it requires is removing the body from that state of inflammation, and you can reverse type 2 diabetes. You know, I have worked with many people that has happened with. And then gallstones as well, like gallbladder issues. A lot of people have their gallbladders removed these days, and that can be part of this restrict problem. And then the mental fatigue of it, like I said, constantly thinking about it, worrying about it. Also, reducing food intake can give you just like brain fog and memory loss. And also your brain like needs glucose, like it needs sugar to function. I think it's about 30% of your overall energy intake goes to the brain. That is a lot of energy that is used up here. So if you're working and you're like interacting with people and you're using your brain, like you need energy, and your brain will definitely punish you if it doesn't get enough. So why is this all so complicated? Like we've ended up in this situation for a reason. Like it's not simple. And also, the amount of information that we have these days almost makes it feel like super complicated. And the reason that it feels like that is because actually this problem of health and people kind of not really sure how to tackle it, it is quite a complex problem. There are multiple factors which determine somebody's health, and diet is one of them, but there are so many other factors too. And this is one of my, I guess, the ethos of my business really is that like we need to be looking at all aspects of health, the emotional side of health, the mental side of health, what's happened to us as children. Like all of these things are kind of driving our behavior now. And like you can see from this diagram, there's so many different things, and that you don't have to tackle them all in one go, but over time you can change them. And I always say to people, the first place to start is in the gut, because the gut is the root of your immune system. It's the root of your metabolic health. How well you process food is going to make you feel better if you're absorbing the right nutrients. So it's really, that's really the first place to start. And, we're eating so many more ultra processed foods these days that is really disrupting gut health as well. So if we can sort of focus on that bit first. And, these metabolic diseases that I talked about, they don't just start. They start 20 or 30 years before the symptoms. So actually prevention is what we really want to try and do. And no matter where you are in your journey, you can definitely make changes. I'm working with an 80-year-old lady at the moment, and she is so determined to, be as healthy as she possibly can be. And I mean, if that isn't inspiring, I don't know what is. Like, she's amazing, honestly. And she's embraced the whole process, and she really wants to kind of do her best. And, there is no right time to begin. Like sometimes, you just got to do it and take that plunge. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about this because I think this is something that I talk to my clients about. Apologies for the language, but this fuck it attitude, it's the thing that basically starts the binge. It's it's after the restriction, something happens, you have a bad day at work, you fall out with your partner, whatever it is, there's a reason usually that you go, oh fuck it, I can't be arsed anymore. And everything goes out of the window, and that's when you start going into the binge cycle. And it's the symptom of being good. It's like, oh, I've been so good. It's almost like I deserve to kind of have the opposite. And this is another reason why restriction in the psychological sense is really not a good thing, because you almost, your mind is telling you, oh, but you've been so good, like you can have those 5 chocolate bars, it's fine, and then it's like, where does it end? And so I'm sure we've all been there. It's that kind of self-perpetuating thing. So you have a bad day, you get stressed, you go out for dinner with your friends, everyone's like, oh, just for tonight, have what you want, and then it's all messed up. So again, it's not a moral failing, and it's not a willpower either. It's because of the system that you're trying to use to be healthy, which is actually at fault. And I just wanted to kind of like talk to this a little bit, because I'm sure you've seen pictures of Kelly Osbourne recently. She is unrecognizable pretty much from what she used to look like. And I know she's had grief, and there's obviously other things going on in the background, but I just wanted to kind of illustrate that thinness is not the same as health. and losing a lot of weight very quickly, whether that's from a diet, whether it's from a gastric band, whether it's from GLP-1 injections, you know, it has multiple implications for the body. You know, like I said before, like loss of muscle mass. It's really bad for bone density as well, you know, particularly as women, as we go through like menopause, you know, our estrogen drops and bone density is affected by that. So, you know, unfortunately, this trend, which was around when I was growing up, this sort of skinny Kate Moss kind of look, you know, it had gone away for a very long time, but it's sadly coming back now. And there's so many celebrities that are abusing this medication. I mean, they're all swearing blind that they're not, but it's so obvious. And, you know, it's really undermines everything about women's health. You know, women are not supposed to look like skeletons. Like, we're supposed to have fat on our body. Okay, yes, there is like a level where it's unhealthy. However, you know, it's actually more damaging to be skinny like that than it is to be a bit overweight. So, you know, I think it's really important to remember that, you know, losing weight doesn't necessarily mean you're healthy. And you have to ask yourself, what is it that you want? Do you want health, or do you want to look a certain way? Because that's kind of, I think at the moment, the two different options that people are promoting, really. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of talk to that, really. So just a little bit also about the weight loss injections, because I think it's such a current topic now. And, you know, I don't want to say that they're all bad, because they're not. You know, they are very effective at helping people to lose weight, and they are easy to use. They don't require a lot of effort. You know, you have to obviously inject them, and there are certain side effects. So I know that people I've spoken to have had things like nausea, lack of interest in a lot of parts of their life, not just food. You know, loss of social life and that kind of stuff, because food is part of the way that we socialize. However, you know, if we think about it in terms of restriction, when you're taking that injection, it's basically cutting off your hunger signals, so you don't feel hunger at all. So you're virtually not eating any nutrients at all. That causes the metabolic changes like I discussed earlier. And then once you stop taking the injection, it's a little bit like when the diet ends. You know, you then go into a cycle. So your hunger will come back eventually. It might not come back straight away, but it will come back eventually. And then you're going to be very hungry, because you've had a period of extreme restriction, and you're going to gain that weight back. And so that's why a lot of people are becoming more dependent on these injections, because they are afraid of not taking them anymore. And I think the other thing about this is that when you're taking the injection, you haven't learned anything about health. You haven't learned how to nourish your body, or what foods are really like nourishing for you, and how to, you know, prepare nice meals for yourself. All it's doing is removing the need to eat altogether. And so I know that there are some places where they're offering the two things together. So take the injection, but learn at the same time. You know, work with a nutritionist like me or somebody else, and, you know, have both things together side by side. So when you stop taking the injection, you've still got all the tools and strategies that you need to be able to look after yourself and nourish your body properly. You want to feel energized, I'm guessing. You want to feel energized and healthy and, you know, on the ball in your mind. You don't want to feel like sluggish and, you know, have that sort of obsession around food. So, you know, I think the two together are an amazing combination if they are kind of prescribed in the right way. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of say that as well. I'm not against them. I'm not, absolutely not against them. I'm against them being abused by people, for sure. And I'm against them being used without there being, you know, proper education around it, really. So what is the solution then? So what can we do instead of this like idea of restriction? Well, I wanted to just kind of go over a couple of ideas with you. I very much promote something called food freedom, and my coaching program called Intuitive Food Freedom is a group program, which you can join at any time. There's modules for you to work through. It's not there's no start date or end date. It's called an evergreen program, so you can join it whenever. And there's weekly calls with me as well. And my sort of ethos of that is to really try to help people to move away from the restrictive mindset, and this idea of like, you know, cutting things out to lose weight. But also not just that, it's all about like the mental side of weight loss as well. So how we relate to food, how we eat emotionally, how we talk to our bodies, and into this kind of this place where we're able to actually listen to our bodies and what they need, nourish ourselves with really like good whole foods. So I'm just kind of comparing the two here really. So in a dieting restriction mindset, you're restricting a food group or a nutrient. In food freedom, you're eating the foods that feel good in your body. Okay, so I'm not saying that, you know, you're just eating like donuts every meal, because that is not going to actually make you feel good, but you're able to kind of choose food with awareness around what it's giving you. Labels food as good or bad in restriction. So this is a very like dichotomous way: good, bad, healthy, unhealthy. And that is a very kind of damaging way to see food, because food is a mixture of so many different chemicals. And one of the things that intuitive food freedom teaches you is something called food neutrality. So it helps you to try to see food as just a mixture of nutrients rather than this sort of dichotomous labeling. Dieting creates disconnection from your body signals, because everything you're doing is coming from here. Food freedom helps you to relearn to listen to the body. So what does hunger feel like? What does fullness feel like? And then to trust the body signals. And that can take a bit of time to get used to, actually, because we're so disconnected and used to listening to the mind over the body. Dieting and restriction takes the joy out of food. It makes it restrictive. It makes there have like rules and regulations and fear around food. Food freedom allows you to enjoy food again and see it as a pleasurable part of your life. Guilt and shame comes from restriction, because if you fail a diet, you're then like, I'm a terrible person. Like there's something wrong with me, like I said before. Whereas food freedom, it actually helps you to quieten down that critic, that inner food police. My therapist used to call it my slave driver. And, you know, it's this constant narrative of like, you've done this wrong, you shouldn't have done that, like you've had too much of that. And then dieting restriction focuses on body weight only. It's like, how much do you weigh? Whereas food freedom focuses on health and energy and vitality. So dieting restriction causes you to gain more weight over time, whereas food freedom helps you to stabilize your weight and stay there for life. Metabolic and hormonal imbalances are real impact of dieting, as we've already seen, whereas food freedom allows your metabolism to stay at a balanced level. And then you can eat for your cycle as well. So you can eat cyclically. Dieting restriction leads to cravings and binging, like we talked about, whereas food freedom actually removes cravings. Like so many of my clients say that. They're like, I don't even have sugar cravings anymore. And that's because your body is not hungry. It's because you're not starving it for periods of time. And then you're not binging because you're not in that sort of deficit. And then dieting restriction, you know, like I said already, it's not a long-term solution, whereas food freedom is something you can do for the rest of your life. So I have a 3-pillar approach that I kind of use as my like foundation really for what I offer. And I just wanted to explain that to you a little bit. So the first pillar is about science. I used to be a biology teacher, a science teacher, and I did that for about 15 years in secondary schools. And, you know, I'm a biologist at heart. I'm a nutritionist as well. And I do love the science. And I think that so much of what is happening and what I've talked to you about tonight is rooted in science. So that's the first pillar. You know, I said before, gut health is really important, reducing inflammation, eating whole foods, and getting your body into that state where it's got the opportunity to feel healthy and vital. And then the second pillar is psychology. So we can get our body healthy, but if we haven't got the mind on board, it's never going to stick. So we have to understand our own psychology, be able to see ourselves and our behavior patterns and our habits, understand the diet culture narratives that we have absorbed, you know, because we all have different ones that we live our lives by. Are we eating emotionally, and what can we do about that? And then also the inner critic that I talked about before. And then the spirituality side is a really important part of it. And I know some people like look at this and go, oh, it's woo woo, but actually one of the most important voices that we'll ever hear is our own inner voice. And that is, I'm not talking about this, by the way, I'm talking about what comes from the body. The body is one of the wisest things that you can ever listen to. The mind has been conditioned. The mind has got all these other voices coming from all these other people outside of you. The body hasn't. The body is purely your voice. So if you can come back into that trust with your own intuitive voice, that can be really amazing. And it can be the thing that actually makes the most change, actually, for, you know, in these three pillars. And also understanding about the energetics of food as well, and how like different types of foods impact your body. And I also teach a lot about self-love and self-respect and compassion as well, because a lot of the diet culture kind of mentality is very sort of self-deprecating. You know, we tell ourselves we've done this wrong, we've done that wrong, we shouldn't have eaten that or whatever. Very critical, self-critical. So those are my three pillars. And I believe that that kind of gives this idea of whole health, like holistic health. And I just wanted to show you some people that I've worked with, because I've worked with a big range of different people, and you know, they come to me with all sorts of different conditions. Some people are just in a really bad place with their behavior around food, but some people have like the physical kind of manifestations of that. And Mick was somebody who actually just lives down the road from me, and he's a really, really lovely guy. He's about 67 now. He's got a young son, and he came to me with, he'd been on the keto diet for ages. And he was just like, I don't understand. In the beginning, I was losing weight, I felt really good. And then something happened and it just stopped working. And he was 123 kilos. He was type 2 diabetic. He was living with a lot of chronic pain in his body. He couldn't really stand up properly. Like he couldn't get up out of bed. And he just felt really trapped in his body. And he kind of knew why he was in that situation, but he just didn't have the understanding to get himself out of it. And he was trying diets and he was trying all these things that he read online, and nothing was working. So I worked with him for 3 months initially. We actually worked together for 6 months in the end. But in the first 3 months, he lost 20 kg. And that is not from restriction. That is from eating different foods. You know, I gave him like a sort of a detox protocol at the beginning, where he was eating foods that really lower inflammation in the body. And then I taught him how to eat for health. He went from being 6.7 to 5.5. So his HbA1c went out of the diabetic range. His waist circumference, he lost like, you know, what's that, 40? Yeah, is it? No, 40 centimeters off his waist. I mean, that's amazing. You know, no more acid reflux. He quartered his diabetic medication with a view to coming off it eventually. And he used to go for walks in the woods. It was so cute. Like he would message me and he'd be like, I feel so happy. Like I love walking with the trees. And, you know, he was really just, it changed so much in his life. And he felt like he just had everything he needed to do that forever. And so that was really lovely. And then why does it work? Well, it works because I love this iceberg analogy. It's so good for so many things. But for this, you know, we have the symptom on the surface, and that could be weight gain. It could be diabetes. It could be, you know, poor gut health. It could be hair loss. It could be brain fog, whatever the symptom is. That is just the surface thing. There is so much more going on underneath the surface. And that is why this process that I take people on works, because it tackles the root cause of what's happening. Yes, the symptom is important, but by tackling the root cause, it changes the symptom and it makes the symptom go away. And, you know, we have behaviors which we are doing every day, you know, habits which are kind of being driven by the subconscious mind. Actually, I don't know if you've read the Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton. Listen to it on Audible if you can, or read the book, because it's amazing. And, you know, he says in that 95% of our choices and behaviors come from subconscious conditioning. So every single day, we are only in control of 5% of our behaviors and choices. You know, everything else is being run on autopilot, which is really useful, you know, very useful for things like driving and all that sort of stuff that we do. However, when it comes to food and it comes to our health, they can be behaviors that are very damaging, that we've learned as children, that we think are healthy, that are actually not serving us anymore. So understanding conditioning, understanding your emotional state and how that's influencing your behavior, and then understanding what your behavior is. So looking at those kind of layers underneath as well. Excuse me, just have a quick drink. So why is it sustainable? So it doesn't just work, it works for life. It's not just something that kind of helps you for a bit and then goes away. So the reason why these types of things are sustainable is because you're doing it for yourself. Yeah, like the injection, it's not something that you are putting work into. You know yourself, if you've ever done anything where you've had to really put your effort and energy into it, it feels so rewarding. And by the end of it, you feel like uplifted. And it's the same with this. So it helps you to build that self-confidence because you have done it. You have made the changes. You have seen the progress. You've learned, you've educated yourself. It gives you a sense of empowerment because you're in control again. You know, dieting makes you think you're in control, but you're not. It actually makes you lose control around food. Whereas when you are eating in this kind of very whole food way, you're actually much more in control because you're not starving anymore. It's a lifelong strategy. So it's tools and knowledge that you can't unlearn. Once you know it, you know it. Metabolic and hormonal balance is part of it as well. So when you're balanced in your hormones and your metabolism, your hunger and everything is also balanced as well. It restores the gut, and like I said before, you know, the gut is the root of so much of our health that comes through. It's intuitive, so it helps you to like trust your body and listen to your body signals. It educates you, so things like what ingredients to look for, what types of foods are better than others, you know, like should you go for rolled oats or jumbo oats, like those kind of things can be really like life-changing. And it gives you information about the choices to make as well, like which foods to choose, like when you're out for a meal or whatever. And then it's also natural. There are no side effects. So this does not have, you know, any negative side effects to it. It's just going to give you the health that you want. And you can keep coming back to it anytime. So just another one of the guys I've worked with, this is Bav and his son. So he was actually in a wheelchair when I started working with him. He had neuropathy, which is basically a side effect of diabetes, where because your blood vessels get damaged by the excess sugar in them, it actually causes the blood vessels to die, and it stops the blood flow into your extremities. So things like your feet and your legs can become affected. And he lost feeling in his legs completely. And he was in hospital for quite a long time. And when I started working with him, like I said, he was in the wheelchair. And one of his goals was to ride his motorbike again, because he's always been really into that, and he does like dirt biking and stuff. And he was really sad that he couldn't do that. So this was a picture that he sent me, like after 3 months of working with me, and I literally cried. He sent me a video of him in his garden with his son, and I just cried because I was like, wow, that's just, you know, I was so happy that he was able to do that again. You know, it really can be life-changing. And you know, he definitely didn't find the process easy, particularly the food at the beginning. It's a lot of food that he'd never heard of. You know, there was things like flax seeds, for example, that he was just like, what's a chia seed? What's a flax seed? I don't know what these things are. I got him having oats for breakfast instead of eggs, you know, and these kind of things. And, you know, no more sort of like bacon every day. You know, he still has bacon, but at the beginning he was like, right, I'm going to get rid of that for a bit. And again, you know, he was overweight. He was very diabetic. You know, he was 51, went down to 41 in the 3 months. And then he sent me this screenshot from his NHS app. So he got down to 35, which is amazing. I was like, I think that's even lower than mine. So yeah, so it's really, really impressive. And this little snippet at the top here was from his doctor, who had been working with him when he was in the hospital, and he sort of confirmed that his HbA1c, which is the historic blood glucose level, was down to the normal range, which was amazing. and he stopped taking his metformin and his glycoside as well. That was his choice. That was nothing to do with me, because I'm not a doctor. I don't work with medication, but he did that. And yeah, he was able to ride his bike again, which was amazing. And he did eventually say that it was the best experience ever. So I'm not quite sure I believe him, but yeah, that's what he said. So so I'm just going to very briefly sort of talk a little bit about my journey, just because I think it's important for you to know like where I've come from. As I said, I was an ex-biology teacher. I was living in Bangkok. I was living in burnout, basically. I was pushing myself really hard. I was not eating properly. I was over exercising. I was in the restrict binge cycle. My periods had stopped. Like, it was all just really, really difficult. And yeah, I felt like I was in early menopause, actually. The brain fog was really bad. And I just kind of got to a point where I just didn't really know what to do. And it was during COVID that I decided to seek some help, because I could really see my behavior. I was like very polarized during COVID, and I was living on my own in my flat. I was teaching online during the day, and then after 3 o'clock, I had nothing to do and no one to see. And it really made me kind of see my obsessive behavior around food and everything. And so I eventually got help, and I went through like a recovery for my eating disorder, which I kind of admitted to myself at the time. Like, I didn't really ever want to admit that, I think, for a long time, but eventually I did. And people always sort of imagine somebody with an eating disorder to look like a skeleton, and I never did. Like, I could never get that skinny. I would actually gain weight when I was restricting, and so it was very easy to hide it, actually. And I think that's true of a lot of people who are in like a binge restrict cycle, because often you're a normal weight, actually, or and people don't recognize it. So you can hide it for a long time. And it was sort of like the diet culture narratives kind of, I think, led me to have that issue over time. And in periods of stress and everything else, it just became worse. But I went through recovery. I studied nutrition. I decided to not go down like the pharmaceutical route, which was like antidepressants and hormones to get my periods to come back. I was like, no, I know that there's a better way to do this. And I worked with an Ayurvedic doctor, which is basically old Indian medicine. And she basically helped me with food, with some gentle yoga, with some breath work. And in 2 weeks, my period started again. And my brain fog completely went. I lost weight as well, which I was like, whoa, I've actually eaten food and I'm losing weight. Like, how is that working? And that was when I decided to become a nutritionist and sort of help other people to heal their bodies, because we all have that capacity. And, I, in very, very short space of time, was able to heal a really major problem that was like really badly affecting my life. And I thought, why are we not helping people to do this everywhere? So this is my mission now. I'm here to kind of support people who want to go down a more natural route. They don't just want to rely on medication for life. It obviously has a place, but there are ways that we can kind of come off this and help ourselves. And I want to help people make lasting change, for life, like not just something that lasts for a few months. And in doing that, we have to tackle the physical element, the psychological element, and the energetic element of the imbalance that's happening in our bodies. So that's why I ended up doing all the training and the learning that I did, mainly to help myself initially, but eventually to help others. So I just want to talk a little bit about Intuitive Food Freedom, which is my 3-month program. I do offer one-to-one coaching as well, which I'm more than happy to talk to you about as well. But this is kind of, I guess, an introduction really to the sort of way that I work. So like I said, this is an evergreen program which you can join anytime. And you have access to everything for 3 months. And it's a self-guided program. So there's 6 foundational modules, each looking at a different element of the food-body relationship. And these kind of help you. They take you on a journey to like understand your relationship with food and your relationship with emotional eating, and then to a place where you're developing more trust with your body and more intuition. And then also it's actually quite a high support program, even though it's self-led, because there's a weekly live call with me as well, where you will come on and we'll, depending on how many people are in the program at one time, we'll have a live coaching call basically. And it's your opportunity to talk to me about what's going on for you. If you're having any issues, if you want to share something. And what I've seen is it's actually amazing for people to learn from each other as well. Because the people in the program are all going through a similar thing, and it can be really lovely to kind of have other people there to talk to that are experiencing, and you can give advice to them as well. So it's a really lovely community. And then there's integration activities as well, which again you can do in your own time. Things like activities to do, journaling. There's some audios that you can download as well, like meditations and stuff. There's a few little worksheets to do as well. And like I said, that's a supportive community space as well. So people that come out of this is that they wake up in the morning and they're not thinking about food straight away. They're not thinking about, I have to plan out all my meals today, or I can't eat that today, or I must be better today. And they're able to just be free around food. And it really is the most liberating feeling when you can do that. And this lady, Tammy, she worked with me. She actually worked with me one-to-one, but we worked very much on this stuff together. And I think this is really important to realize, is that what I'm offering is not a quick fix. Okay, it's not something that I'm going to do for you. You have to be ready to do it for yourself. And I'm here to guide you and support you, of course. But it is a journey that you are going to go on. And, if you want to try and squeeze yourself into some sort of ideal that you've seen out there, then this definitely is not for you. This is a really deep, meaningful transformation process that I will take you on. And it's an investment in yourself. It's an investment in your health and your life. And it's a step towards having that holistic health that you want as well. So if you want to speak to me about this, about anything that I offer, whether it's one-to-one or whether it's the group coaching, the first thing to do really is book a discovery call with me, because I want to get to know you. I want to speak to you about your situation and figure out what's the best option for you. So, you might not be suited to the group coaching. It might be better for us to work one-to-one. So, so if you want to book a call, there's a 30-minute call there. Or if you want to go deeper, you can go onto my website and book a call through there. And that will also take you to a questionnaire, which you can fill in, and then we can have a slightly longer call. So it's completely up to you which one you'd like to do. And I just want to make sure that what I'm offering is the right thing for you, really. So that is everything from me. A couple of freebies. Sorry, forgot about that. So there's a healthy me meditation, which you can also download on my website. There's a QR code to it there. And I've also created a digital guide, which is for ending the restrict binge cycle. So I think it's about 10 pages. You can just download that for free as well off my website. So again, I will send this out to everybody, and I'll put all the links and everything in an email, so you'll have everything there too. So finally, thank you so much for listening. I hope that you found that interesting and enlightening. And does anybody have any questions they would like to ask?
Not a question, but just want to say thank you. That was really informative, and I feel quite excited to potentially work with you. What I love the most is the way you talked about the fuck it attitude. I have referred to that so many times in my personal journey. That is definitely the best way to describe it. When you are literally like, shall I do this or shall I do a better option? And then you're like, fuck it. Yes. And you go for the not so good option. And I love your reference to the like psychological stuff as woo-woo. It's another reference I use all the time. So I've just resonated with those. Really, really interesting stuff. I personally will say I am on Mounjaro, but I've been put on it because I'm diabetic and I have other health complications. And I think Mounjaro is actually a diabetes
It is.
treatment. It's not a weight loss program as such, but weight loss is a result of it. But I will say, just to give you a bit of hope, that the NHS offer a really good support system, and it's educational about nutrition, it's educational about exercise, it's educational. I think this week we're doing stuff around the mind and well-being. So just to put your mind at rest, the NHS is certainly doing that support with the injection. So that thought you might like to hear that. I don't know if it's the same for people who are self-funding. I don't know. But the NHS seem to be doing it right.
That's good. Yeah, that's really good. And absolutely what you say is right. You know, it is a diabetes medication. And actually all of them were originally diabetes medications, or the GLP-1 agonist anyway. And yeah, it's an amazing tool. Like I said, you know, I think it can help a lot of people. And I have seen.
But I do have concerns, like you mentioned, about you know, muscle loss and things like that, and they do teach you around that, about, you know, having more protein and moving more. For me personally, and I'll go into that maybe on a discovery call, my mobility is limited, and so that is a fear of mine, that if I don't eat, because my only option at the moment is up the protein, I can't do that much movement, although I am increasing it. So there's concerns around that, which I think would be nice to be alleviated through nutrition to start with, at least. But
amazing. Oh, thank you so much for sharing. It's really, you know, it's amazing that you're on the journey already, because, you know, they're the sorts of people that I want in my community, are people who are already proactive in changing their lives, you know, and whatever help I can give you, I'm really excited to discuss.
And that whole binge and restriction and the yo-yoing and the set point weight. Oh, I'm a classic case for all of this. I'm literally watching your webinar going, yeah, that's me. That's me. Yeah, that's me. That's me. Yeah, me. Yeah, me. So I feel like I'm like your golden customer. All going on. So I'd be really excited to talk to you further. But thank you for this webinar. It's been really helpful.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm really glad that you found it helpful. And it's just nice to know, isn't it, that it's not just you, that there's like other people out there that have experienced or are experiencing what you're experiencing. So yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. Right, I'm just going to stop the recording. If I can remember how to do it.